The end of last week saw a real jump in volatility for all sorts of markets. We saw the price of gold, for example, crash down to an 8-month low, but silver managed to weather the storm pretty well. So does this mean that we're having a bit of a delayed reaction for silver and we can expect it to sell off? Or actually, the recovery off those November lows is still holding and there are going to be further gains to come? The end of February saw a massive jump in volatility for all sorts of asset classes in financial markets. You can see a move here in silver on the 25th and the 26th of February, coming down from $28 an ounce to trade almost down to 26 on the 26th of Feb. But as this week has got underway, we've seen the price stabilize. We're still within this overall trend off the November lows. So I'm wondering, well, what's the next trade to do for silver? Is it at risk of getting hit if this volatility returns? Or actually, is it weathered the storm pretty well? Of course, we had quite a volatile February with the price punching up to just briefly above $30 right at the beginning of February. But since then, it's been, I suppose, fairly flat. We sort of reversed very quickly on the 2nd of Feb, and it traded in a range, but a reasonably tight range, I suppose, by silver's recent volatility. We do have a trade on silver running at the moment. So we bought in, I think it was the last video, bought in at $27.30. The price is about, 50 cents against us at the moment. But I do think there could be another opportunity from here. So I'll talk a bit about silver now, then we'll come back and look at things in more detail. Hello, I'm David Jones from Capital.com. And I thought we'd do an update on silver as it's the beginning of a new month, beginning of March. Happy St. David's Day to any fellow Welsh viewers. So as usual in this video, we'll talk about what's been driving it lately, what to look out for going into March. We'll go onto the platform, look at things in more detail, see if there's a trade to do. Really volatile finish for markets towards the end of last week. All sorts of moves going on. Silver, I think, held up quite well, but we'll talk more about that when we get into some of the points to watch. As usual, if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, if you could click on subscribe, it does help support the channel. We are getting tantalizingly close to 100,000 subscribers. Thank you very much for all your support. And of course, we do these regular live streams every Friday now at 2:30 for about an hour where we look at markets in real time, a whole host of different markets. If you're subscribed with the alarm bell notification pushed, that bell, you get a notification off YouTube when we go live. Anyway, let's get into silver and see what March could hold. So we did see some big moves in silver over recent months. From the November low to the early February high, we saw the price of silver rise by more than a third, up 37%. And that's a big move for any sort of market. So a really sizable recovery in the price of silver. So if you look back at February as a whole, it did end up being a really volatile month with the price very briefly moving above $30. But actually, if you look to where we are now, compared to where we were at the end of January, the last week of January, there's not much real change. And I said this about gold the other week, and it fell off a cliff. But silver, a lot of the time, is quite a boring market. I think we can often see a real drop-off in volatility when it comes to silver. I wonder if things are going to get a bit more interesting, and I'll talk about some of the reasons why. From a supply and demand point of view, the industry body, the Silver Institute, has said that demand for silver should hit an 8-year high this year. So you could take that as an argument that, we could see the price perhaps creep a little bit higher, perhaps threaten that $30 an ounce level again. But there could well be some other interesting developments in markets. I said that at the end of last week, we saw lots of volatility across everything, FX, commodities, stock indices. And it was all due to bond yields, a leap in US bond yields. And one concern here, amongst others, was that the US central bank, the Federal Reserve, and arguably other central banks around the world, have perhaps underestimated the threat of inflation. It feels like it's been an awfully long time since we had to worry and talk about inflation creeping up. But one of the concerns is that perhaps central banks have underestimated that. Now, on the one hand, of course, inflation would be good for the price of silver, you would think. We'd expect to see the price again move a bit higher because of that. But if we do see inflation start to creep up, the classic way of trying to combat inflation is to raise interest rates. And we did see some strength in the US dollar, and we are seeing it holding on to that strength at the beginning of this week. So we are seeing, I think, a continued, perhaps, turnaround in the fortunes of the US dollar. And that's the big threat for silver this year. If we see, I think, a recovery in the US dollar, it's clearly going to put pressure on precious metals such as gold and silver. But for me, the bias for silver is still up for now. Let's talk about some of the levels to watch, then we'll jump on the chart and look at things in more detail. I think that the two most immediate hurdles, both from February, those highs briefly seen just above $30. After that, on the way down, we've seen some resistance around $28.35. On the downside, we've got a good little trend going on silver. The most immediate support for me, about $25.85 from earlier in February. But as usual, let's put some color on these numbers. Let's take a look at the chart and see if there is a trade to do to kick the month off for silver. In recent videos for silver, we've looked at the strength off that November low from the low sort of 21.18.87, that sort of area, just below 22. But actually, if we go back to the March lows for silver, we've still got this definite trend in place. So we are 11 months plus into this recovery when silver was briefly below 12. And this trend line for now is still doing, I think, a pretty decent job. I've added our 20-day moving average on here. I must admit, I'm not the biggest fan of moving averages. I mean, it's a classic trend following system, of course, when the price moves above the moving average, like back here to highlight a great signal from June. It's a buy signal. When it falls below the moving average, if we pick up on this move in September, it's a sell signal. And that's great when markets are trending. But if we get a period where it goes sideways, you can see we just have plenty of buy and sell signals as the price flips around. But I think, broadly speaking, clearly that the trend for silver is still up. The last move was below the moving average, but given the way the market has flip-flopped in recent weeks, I wouldn't read too much into that for now. Looking at the RSI down here, we're not getting much off the RSI. The last signal we had was that move the beginning of February when the market went overbought, went up to $30. The price has sold off since then, but because the price has been a bit sideways, not much from the RSI, currently sitting almost halfway up the range, around about 45%. So for me, what is more important is, as usual, the price action. And I think we've got some really obvious support. If we zoom this chart in, so we can see how important during February the sort of $26 mark was. So $25.89 was the low, the 4th of February, came back to $26.05 on the 18th of Feb. And just last week when we had that volatility, the market traded back to $26.12. So I suppose if I was a buyer of silver now, the closest I would want my stop would be the other side of $26. If we break below there, I think clearly the risk is looking for a pullback into the range from January. But what I want to do, I want to trade with this trend. I know silver can be boring a lot of the time. Then we get a burst of volatility. Then it goes nowhere again. I want to set my stop loss somewhere where I'm not going to get just taken out in the volatility. So what I'm going to do is go for a stop loss. I'm going to be a buyer because the recent trend has been up and the trend since March is up. I'm going to be a buyer with a stop the other side of the mid-January low. That mid-January low is near enough $24 on the nose. So I'll go $23.50 for a stop in silver. And really, again, just looking for this trend to continue to see if we can start another run up towards $30. So for me, even if it does break down from here below 26, I'd be expecting buyers to come in ahead of 24. Let's set the trade up. So we're ready to go. The price is trading just above 26.81 at the moment. I would like to buy 105 ounces where the price is trading now. Put a stop loss in at 23.50, and that's for our usual risk of £250. Let's send the trade through. That's it. My order's filled. So I'm in at 26.81.8. As I've said a few times, particularly in the live stream, silver is not one of my favorite markets because I think it's pretty boring a lot of the time. But we do have this recovery going on from March. That's still chugging away. We get the odd dip towards the trend line. The trend line provides support. It tested $26 again last week. We're seeing a bit of strength at the start of the week. So for me, it's a reasonable trade to buy in, see if we get a move to 30, then review it and look to move the stop then. That's it for the update. We'll see if it proves to be another volatile month. silver. But for now, from me, David Jones and Capital.com, we'll leave things there. Good luck with your trading. For more trading videos just like this, please subscribe to our channel.